Step in my dojo, you step in my dojo, you step in my.
Okay, so this is a pretty exciting one. Now that we are in phase 3, now that you all learned last week how to get to phase 3, how to take your tracks and render lots of MIDI channels down to few audio channels, now we're gonna do some track finishing tricks that you can only do in phase 3. For getting to phase 3 is like a prerequisite for all of these tricks. So I'm going to show you a bunch of cool stuff that you can do, some racks that you can make, and a bunch of tricks that you can do for getting to for getting through phase 3 and getting to the end of your production process. There's a bunch of different kinds of stuff that you do in phase 3. So some of the effects that I want to kind of show you are going to be glitch effects that are made with like gating and editing and resampling. Some of the effects are going to be pitch changing effects like record scratch, like various sampler edits, etc. And then there's this really cool vibrato effect that I made that I'll show you how to make a vibrato effect. And then some of the effects are gating effects like mutes, using the Crossfader, auto pan, LFO tools, side chaining, punch in, punch out, etc. There's also the transition effects. I'll show you a few different things you can do for transitions, and then I'm going to show you some master effects too. So I want to start with the gating effects. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is cut all the tails off of your reverbs. So I'm just going to make a just quick little sound file here, and I'll just show you. Okay, so let's say that this little zippy zap is part of our track. So I'm just going to take the tail off of it, and yeah, this little zippy buddy is part of our track. Okay, so let's say that in this, let's say you want to have this little zip effect right about here. Okay, so let's say this thing happens right before the turnaround. And let's also say that we have a reverb on it. Now, instead of just adding the normal Ableton reverb, now that we all have 10.1, I'm going to show you how you can get at the reverb in the echo effect. So if you turn any delay on, you turn the feedback all the way down, you turn the rate to time and turn the rate all the way down, and then turn it all the way wet. Now this is just going to be 1 millisecond late. Okay, so if I turn off the input filtering, this is no echo effect. This is with echo effect. No discernible difference, right? All it is 1 millisecond late. And the reason why I've done that is because instead of using the Ableton reverb, I want to use the reverb in echo. And if you do that, if you set it to these settings, 1 millisecond delay time, 0% feedback and 100% wet, then when you turn on the reverb, instead of applying reverb to a delay, it's applying reverb to the dry signal. When I turn this reverb up, we get this gorgeous sounding reverb that sounds very, very different from the Ableton reverb. Really, really cool. Okay, so then you can put some input filtering on it. And I'll set it about 50%. So let's say that that's our reverb. So now check it out. When you freeze a track with a reverb on it, it's going to have this tail, okay? So when you freeze it, so you get the normal track here, which you can activate or deactivate, and then you also get this reverb tail. So a lot of the time when people want to kill their reverb tails, they'll freeze it, and then they'll edit the tail, or just delete the tail like that. So now we get hard stop on the reverb tail. Very, very important to do that. But I want to show you a kind of cool trick that I learned about how to do this without freezing it, right? So let's say that this is our sound, and it's got that reverb tail. Now, if I take a copy of the sound and I drag it over and I make it into a bookend by dragging the volume all the way down, right? Let's say I want it to stop the reverb. If I right click here, I'll put it on warp so I can use envelopes. If I right click on the volume and then go to show modulation, now if I automate the volume down, this little clip, I'll make it black for a mute. Watch what happens, it'll mute the reverb. Look at that. It's a mute now. Isn't that useful? So anytime you want to make a reverb tail stop, just make a clip that does not necessarily have any audio in it. That's just like, it's just, you know, serving as basically a dummy clip. Turn the volume all the way down and then right click on the channel volume and go to show modulation. And then you can kill the reverb without having to freeze it. So this is really, really useful. And I use this not just in phase 3, I use this like throughout the writing process, but it's very, very, very useful to be able to have a quick little mute. Okay, so that's how you can make a quick little mute. And I want to show you punch in, punch out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these sounds and I'm going to put them in a group. All of those groups are in a group except for the drums. And I'm going to call this punch out. And then I'm going to put this into a group. And I'm going to call it punch in, okay? And then if I go to punch out, okay, so now I've got a gate, and you usually end up putting the details first. You end up ignoring the big picture, getting stuck in a loop, and eventually you say, this doesn't sound like my hero. You give up and you start over. This happens all the time. If it's happening to you, don't worry about it. You're not bad if this is happening to you. This is a normal part of making music. Every producer has to go through this stage.
Understanding how these three forces, mixing, composition, and sound design, come together is absolutely vital to making your music sound loud and clear and well mixed. But if you don't know why, it's a mind-boggling sea of details. So if you want to know why to do what when you're composing the mix, you should check out my course, Composing the Mix.
Okay, so now I've got a gate, and I want the gate to take gate from punch in, and then I'm going to flip the gate and turn the floor all the way down, turn the threshold down. And now, anytime a sound plays on this punch in group, it's going to mute everything that's happening in the punch out group. So let's make a cool sound. Yeah, so let's say I want to. So you see how it mutes everything? Pretty cool. It's nice to have a channel that mutes everything else. But that punch in, punch out trick, it has its own weekly download, by the way. Let's go to Chrome, and I will show you where that is. So there's a weekly download about the punch in, punch out track, punch in, punch out trick. It's a very cool trick. I use it a lot. So let's go to the weekly downloads here and expand this. There you go, punch in and punch out groups. There's more details. There's a whole weekly download about this technique, weekly download 79, okay? So that is a great technique that you can do during phase 3. Sometimes on the punch in group, I'll have all kinds of glitchy versions of the master of the track and then be knocking everything out of the way. But there's actually a simpler way to do that lately I've found myself doing it this way. So I'm gonna ungroup all of these now, and I'm gonna show you a more simple way to do this, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I want everything to be muted in certain spots, and then I'm going to put, let's say here, I want to put a little turnaround made of bass here. So that'll be our, and then let's take this envelope. That's fine. Okay, so now this sound, right? Like if I freeze and flatten this sound, just so you can see what's going on, you'll see that this sound has kind of like a, it does not fill the whole, like see there's these gaps here where there's no audio. Well, if I were relying on a gate with the punch in and punch out, those points where there's no audio, the punch out channel would come back, right? Like you have to have a solid block of sound for the side chained gate to work, right? So here's another way to do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to here. Let's see, let's delete all the automation there. And now I've routed all of these sounds, except for the drums. I've routed all these sounds to Crossfader side B. Now, watch what happens here. If we go into the Crossfader and I bring this down, this is going to mute all of those channels at once, giving us space for the punch-in. So I've put them all on Crossfader side B, and now so that way your punch-ins are always going to be you know, they're always going to have space, and it's going to mute everything much more accurately. Right, so here, let's go put this VR1 shots. So a lot of the time at the end of the track, really the end of the track is all about, you know, making the transitions tight, making all the turnarounds tight. And sometimes you need to mute everything at once. Punch in, punch out is one way to do it, but using the Crossfader is another really, really great way to do it. So here, let's say I wanted to do another clip here. So let's say I wanted to do this pattern now. Imagine that I was like, I changed my mind about how the pattern went. It would be such a pain in the ass to go and do all those mutes, but I can instead just go like this and say, oh, okay, the pattern's changed. Do it there, 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 and there. Imagine doing that mute automation times like 20 tracks. It would suck. Really easy this way. Really, really easy this way. So I would say definitely get your Crossfader on when you're doing these punch-ins. Easy, easy, okay? So lately I've been using the Crossfader to do those sorts of gating tricks throughout the mixing process, but I find them especially useful in phase 3. So another really cool thing that you can do is adding some gating, right? So let's see, what do we have in the breakdown? Let's see, what sounds do we have in the breakdown? Maybe this one? Yeah, so let's say, okay, so now I want to show you an auto pan gate. This is something that you definitely need to know how to do. So I'm going to get the auto pan, and to put it on, I'm going to set it to sync and turn the amount up, phase down, and put it on saw wave. And then I'm going to turn the shape up. And now, as we turn this amount up and down, we get a gate effect, because we're doing gate effects to start. Right? That's a great effect. So sometimes I'll do something like this in a build-up. But you see that? So it's on sync mode, saw mode, shape all the way up, offset and phase all the way down, and then you can set the rate to whatever. And then sometimes it's, if you want to be extra spicy, you might want to like crank the rate up for the last little bit, so it goes. Yeah, so I'd probably do it just on the last bit. Right, and you get that nice crispy gate effect. It can also sometimes sound good on the master. So let's put it on the master. So same gate effect, and let's listen to see if it works on the master. Right, really clean. It's a lot, yes, and it is pretty much exactly like the fake sidechain effect, but it's called a transform. It's called a transform because when you would do like a 16th note scratch, when you'd be flicking the crossfader like tick 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 on 16th notes, that was known as a transform scratch, because you would transform a constant or fresh to fresh, you know, and you could transform the sound. So that's known as a transform, that very fast stuff.